Hey everyone, how's it going? Anthony Muthurajah here, back with a new video lesson for you all. Before I get to the actual lesson, do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, or if it's your first time on here, and hit the notification hit the notification bells, so you don't miss any new video that I put out. Consider joining the channel. You can find more information about that in the description below, so do the needful. Alright, so I figured, since I've been on this bit of a trajectory with talking about certain, not necessarily pure beginner material, but something you might want to consider looking at your early stage of bass playing, I decided I wanted to show you how I approach playing triads in 2 octaves. And the same principles can and will apply when you play arpeggios in general, 7th chords, and whatever else it is. Okay, so first and foremost, 1-octave triads. No matter where you are, the shape remains the same, right? Middle finger on the root, 3rd with the index, pinky on the 5th, and then possibly roll for the octave note. And then when you do minor, you can do the same thing, but it can be a bit of a stretch to go from the middle to index. So usually for minor triads, how I like to do it is start with my index, with the middle finger playing the 5th and the octave note, or the ring finger if your fingers are strong enough. Okay, so, and then of course you have augmented, which would be, I just look at it as a symmetrical shape like that, or based off of the major triad, raise the 5th and then play the root, the octave root. Okay, and then the last triad would be a diminished, which is usually quite hard to play. So it's 1, flat 3, flat 5, root, the octave. Okay, so this is another one that I start with the index. Okay, so basically major and augmented triads, you can start with the middle finger. For minor and diminished, you start with the index. Okay, so that's all in 1 octave. But what happens when you want to play an octave above? So a simple trick is to try to replicate exactly what's going on the bottom up top. However, if you play a 4-string, it's not that easy. If you play a 5, it's a lot easier because you have 5 strings and you can repeat yourself. Because to play 1 octave in its entirety with the octave note, you need 3 strings at the very least. To be comfortable, you can always go like that. So 2 octaves, how do we approach this? For me, I have a very simple thing that I use as a guideline. And this is true for not just arpeggios but scales as well. When you plan to ascend a long distance, you try your best to start with your index finger, okay, on your fretting hand. Why? Because it just makes sense. It sets you up to get to wherever you have to, either quicker or easier. Because if I started with the middle finger, watch what happens. I have to very awkwardly jump from this 5th all the way to this octave note on the 2nd octave up. Now if I start with the 1st finger, okay, root, I'm playing it on the same string, 5th, and then I'm going to replicate exactly what I played here. So it's index, pinky, index, index, pinky, index, pinky, and then same thing, descending. One more time. And then you do this for augmented as well. One more time. So since I can't roll, unlike with the major where I go D and G with the index, it's a D sharp or E flat, so I need the middle finger. And then at the top, I'm not using the middle finger because my pinky needs to reach out to the G. So instead of the middle, replace it with the index up to the pinky. Okay, so like how I mentioned, any form of ascension, you need to start with the index to really maximize how you're able to play all your notes. When you're descending, the opposite is true. You try to descend with your pinky, you should be in a better position to play whatever you want to. Okay, so what I would recommend is, if G feels too stretchy, start with C major up here. Okay, so for the most part of this, when you play in the higher registers, I want you to very consciously think of one thing. You don't want to stretch. You don't want to do this. So you see what happens when I stretch is that my wrist wants to come out, because that's the most comfortable way to stretch. Because you see that I can't do it this way. I can't have it with my wrist inside, and stretching is impossible. But instead of thinking of it as a stretch, think of it as a slight shift to grab the note with the pinky. And then the same is opposite when you go back down. So you're not stretching at any point, but you're just using your thumb as a toggle and then opening up your fingers a little bit to grab the next note. And anyway, once you grab the next note, your index is going to leave. So it's a stepward motion, but you're also trying to anticipate where your fingers are going, which is why naturally over time, the more you practice this, you will start to use the fingers that make sense. Like over here with the augmented, playing that sharp 5 with the index here as opposed to the middle on the bottom makes sense. Why? Because I need to grab the G. If I went middle, see, I don't even do it. I can't even. Very awkward to use the middle. So try this out. Okay, so do major, minor, augmented, diminished. Wow, I didn't think this through. Okay, let's look at the diminished. So 1, flat 3, flat 5, root. This is very odd, because what we're used to with diminished is to play the actual 7th or the 6th. But when you play a triad, it's tricky because you have this. You have the flat 5 there. So what happens if I go? Very odd situation, because I have to go from this flat 5 all the way up here. So what do I try to do? I play that as per usual, and then the G, instead of playing it on the string there, I'm going to come up this way and then play G, B flat, D flat, G. Okay, so sometimes I use my ring finger on this G. But as much as possible, try to use the pinky when you make position shifts happen. Okay, so with the diminished triad, the nature of the triad, the flat 5 to the root, is quite a distance on one string. But it's easier to cover the distance here as opposed to here. For some strange reason, I think it's better to make the jump on the A string as opposed to the G string at the top. Okay, so the good thing with triads is that there's only 4 triads. So you can practice moving in half steps or in the circle of fourths or fifths if you prefer. And you can really get a lot of mileage out of this. It builds your technique, it builds your coordination, it builds your ability to see the fretboard as well. And if you're one of those people that's playing a 5-string already, and if you have a 4 lying around, I really recommend you try this on the 4 or play it on the 5 without using your low B or high C. Okay, so I hope you get something out of this, and I'll see you guys in the shed until the next one. Peace.